I never thought I would find three leather-clad bikers surrounding my terrified teenage daughter as I pulled into our driveway that Tuesday afternoon. But that's exactly what happened when our HOA crossed the line from petty harassment to dangerous menace. Those riders had no idea who they were dealing with or how their lives would change forever in just 3 minutes. How far would you go to protect your children when strangers threaten them on your own property? After 22 years of service as an Army Ranger, I thought I had finally found peace at Evergreen Estates. This was supposed to be my sanctuary, a place where I could finally be present for my daughter, Emma, after missing so much of her childhood during 6 combat tours. My humble farm was everything I dreamed of on long nights in the desert overseas. I am Jonathan Richards, a former colonel in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Most people in Evergreen Estates simply know me as Jim from Lot 44, the quiet man with the 5 acres at the end of Maple Road. I bought this place 3 years ago when I retired from the military. The land was perfect. Enough land for Emma's 4-H projects, a workshop where I could finally pursue carpentry, and most importantly, distance from the chaos that had defined much of my adult life. When I first moved in, the Homeowners Association seemed pretty reasonable. Monthly meetings were short, management fees were affordable, and rules made sense to maintain property values. People minded their own business, which suited me just fine. After coordinating high-risk missions in hostile territory, I welcomed the predictable rhythm of civic life. Everything changed when Todd Mercer took over as HOA president 2 years ago. He moved from some corporate job in town, bringing with him big ideas about community transformation and property value optimization. Within months, he turned our once-friendly community into his personal fiefdom, complete with arbitrary rule changes and aggressive enforcement. It started small, with citations for mailbox heights 2 inches higher, lawn lengths exceeding 3.5 inches instead of the previously accepted 4 inches. People complained, but complied. I fixed my mailbox and kept my grass shorter, figuring it wasn't worth the fight. The real trouble began when I publicly questioned the $500,000 community improvement fund at the quarterly meeting. 8 months of HOA dues increases had passed without any visible improvements anywhere in the neighborhood. Where exactly was the money going? I asked, pointing to financial statements showing significant spending on vaguely named consulting firms. The membership deserved a detailed accounting before approving another increase. The room fell silent. No one had challenged Mercer publicly before. His face was red as he adjusted his expensive tie. "Some people don't understand the proper chain of command," he growled, looking directly at me. Financial management was handled by the executive committee, not open to debate by individual members. Some board members were upset, but no one spoke up. I'd seen this dynamic before in corrupt areas overseas. A strong personality that intimidates others into silence. The next day, Emma's 4-H chicken project, her chance at a college scholarship, suddenly violated community guidelines. Never mind that our property had been clearly zoned for agricultural use when I bought it, or that the county extension office had approved her project months earlier. The letter arrived by certified mail, announcing the violation. Unauthorized presence of livestock on residential property. It demanded that all animals be removed within 48 hours, or a $100 per day fine would be assessed. Emma was devastated. She had spent months researching heritage breed chickens, building coops to exact specifications, and documenting every aspect of their care. Her project focused on sustainable small-scale farming, exactly the kind of initiative that could earn her the scholarship she needed for veterinary school. I filed the appropriate appeals, filed the agricultural zoning documents, and requested a hearing. The response was a second notice of violation. This time claiming the chicken coop design violated architectural codes. Then came complaints about excessive traffic when Emma's 4-H group met at our house. First came warning letters, then escalating fines, then property liens. Every time I addressed one issue, 2 more popped up. It was clear that this wasn't about the rules. It was about making our lives difficult enough for us to give up and move. But what happened next crossed a line I never imagined could happen in America. Last Tuesday started like any other. Emma left for school while I spent the morning in my workshop finishing a display cabinet for her upcoming presentation. Around noon, I went to Walker's Hardware to pick up some more supplies to reinforce the chicken coop. Emma had texted that she'd be home early to work on her project. The spring air was pleasant as I loaded the wood and hardware into my truck. Old Mrs. Walker paid for me herself, commenting on the chicken wire. Emma's birds were still giving her trouble with that HOA guy, she asked, shaking her head. Nothing we couldn't handle, I assured her, not wanting to drag anyone else into our problems. When I pulled into our long driveway 20 minutes later, my heart stopped. 3 men on Harleys were parked in front of our barn. Their bikes, custom choppers with matte black paint and chrome engines, were positioned to block the driveway. And there was Emma, leaning against the chicken coop, clutching her project book to her chest. Her bright yellow t-shirt contrasted sharply with their black leather jackets as one of them jabbed a finger in her face. "It's time you learned to follow the rules," the tallest man growled, standing too close to my daughter. "Chickens like it or not, when the HOA says animals must go, they must go." Emma's eyes met mine. Pure horror. I'd seen the same look in foreign villages when civilians were confronted by armed threats. The men had no idea what had stirred in me. I parked my truck deliberately, leaving the engine running. Before getting out, I reached into the glove compartment and remotely armed my property security system, a precaution I'd installed after the first threatening letter from the HOA. Every camera around our property was now recording. I noticed the distinctive patches on their leather jackets immediately. Iron snakes. Even in civilian life, I'd heard of this particular motorcycle club. Hired muscle, known to solve problems across 3 counties. They are not official outlaws like some of the more famous national clubs, but they operate in the gray area between menace and outright crime. Then I spotted a black Cadillac Escalade parked on the street, just at the edge of my property line. Behind the wheel was Todd Mercer, his phone clearly raised, recording the scene. This was no accident. This was a calculated threat, with the HOA president as the director. I approached carefully, measuring every step, as I had done in countless operations. Old habits never die. My mind automatically cataloged threats, locations, and tactical options. 3 subjects, the leader about 6 feet 2 inches, 240 pounds, right-handed, no visible weapon, but wearing shoes with reinforced toes. The second was shorter but muscular, sleeve tattoos constantly scanning the surroundings, possibly ex-military or law enforcement. The third was younger, nervous energy, hands constantly touching his belt, possibly armed. "Ladies and gentlemen, that's my daughter you're talking to," I called, my voice calm but echoing across the yard. "She's 16. I'm going to ask you to leave her alone for once." Emma's shoulders relaxed slightly at the sound of my voice, but she remained where she was. Their laughter echoed throughout my property. The leader turned, casting me a contemptuous glance. I was dressed in a simple green t-shirt and jeans, just another middle-aged homeowner in his eyes. "Oh, look who's finally shown up," he announced, grinning to reveal a gold tooth. "We had a nice chat with your daughter about property regulations." He stepped toward me, imposing. I didn't move. "We know exactly who you are, old man." He chuckled, nudging his companions. "Jim Richards, Lot 44. 3 warnings and 7 violations in the past 2 months. HOA rules are clear about pets. We're just sending a friendly message about those chickens." The tallest man moved between Emma and the house, effectively blocking her escape. "She's staying until we're done explaining things," he said, not wanting any misunderstandings about the consequences of continued non-compliance. The youngest chuckled nervously. "Yeah, accidents happen to chickens all the time. Foxes, raccoons, motorcycles." I felt something shift inside me, a familiar clarity I hadn't experienced since my last deployment. The world slowed down. Sounds sharpened. Options crystallized. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said calmly, taking another step forward. This property is zoned agricultural by the county. The HOA has no jurisdiction over approved agricultural projects. Now I'll say it again. Get off my daughter. The leader smirked and pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. See, that's where he went wrong. The new HOA rules, a special amendment passed last month, clearly state here that all previous zoning exceptions must be reviewed by the board. He waved the paper around without letting me see it properly. The board had reviewed his situation and decided those birds needed to go. Today, he worked for the HOA officially, I asked, already knowing the answer. The three men exchanged amused glances. Let's say we're community compliance specialists, the leader replied. We help people understand their civic responsibilities. I nodded slowly. And this type of specialist work often involves intimidating minors when their parents aren't home. The atmosphere was tense. The leader's smirk faded. No one was intimidating anyone. We were chatting about the rules. Just to make sure the message was clear this time. I took another measured step. 20 feet away now. Message received. Now get off my property. We're not done here, the leader stated bluntly. HOA President Mercer wanted those chickens gone by sundown or his fines tripled. And trust me, buddy, that was just the beginning of his troubles. 22 years of ranger work teaches you a special kind of calm. Not the absence of fear, but the complete clarity within it. Time slows down. Choices clarify. Training takes over. I've met men like this before. Bullies who mistake kindness for weakness, who understand only strength and fear. The problem is they don't know what real strength looks like. It's not loud. It's not showy. Real strength is controlled, precise, and absolute when unleashed. Emma, I said in a voice she'd never heard before. My commanding voice from years of leading men in life-or-death situations. Go into the house and call Chief Reynolds right now. My daughter recognized it immediately. She straightened her back and tried to move toward the house, but the man on the lead bike stepped into her path, grabbing her arm. We're not done here, sweetheart. Your father needed to understand the gravity of the situation. It was his fatal mistake. He had exactly 5 seconds to release my daughter, I said, my voice dropping to the register that had guided elite soldiers through life-or-death situations. 5. Something in my eyes made him hesitate. A glimpse of what lay beneath the surface of the quiet landlord. 4. His grip on Emma's arm loosened slightly. 3. He released her completely, embarrassment replacing the arrogance. 2. Emma slipped past him and ran toward the house. 1. All three men were now focused on me, suddenly uncertain of the situation they had created. The dynamic had changed, though they didn't understand why. I reached for my phone, dialing with one hand while maintaining unbroken eye contact with the leader. The younger biker glanced nervously at their motorcycle, clearly calculating an escape strategy. What are you gonna do? Call the cops? The leader scoffed, trying to regain control of the situation. By the time they get out of here, we'll be far enough along we'll be back, man. Trust me on that. I didn't answer him. Instead, I spoke clearly into the phone as the line connected. Sierra Tango 7 authorized Crimson Delta. Visual confirmation of 3 iron snakes. Current position, immediate containment. A professional voice answered immediately. Authorization confirmed, Colonel Richards. Assets dispatched, ETA 3 minutes. The leader's face paled as he realized both my identity and the implications of what he had just heard. Wait, Colonel Richards? Colonel Richards? It took exactly 3 minutes from the time they first threatened my daughter. 3 minutes for them to transform from threatening thugs to men with their hands up. Real fear in their eyes. Sir, please end the call. The leader pleaded, real fear in his eyes. We didn't know this was your property. The second biker, the one whose eyes identified as ex-military, backed away to his motorcycle. Doyle, we need to get out of here right now. This guy is. I know who he is. Leader Doyle hissed, cutting him off. Everyone in our world knew that name. The third and youngest biker had real tears forming in his eyes. "Sir, we weren't told who lived here. We were just hired to deliver a message." Doyle knelt down, his hands visible. "Colonel, please, whatever you think is coming, we don't want any part of it. Just let us drive out of here." The sound of approaching cars startled all three men. Two black Suburbans with tinted windows turned into my driveway, maneuvering precisely to block any escape routes. The young biker practically groaned. "Sir, I just got out of prison last month," he pleaded. "I can't go back." "You should think about that before you threaten a minor," I replied flatly. I kept the phone line open, letting them hear every word of my conversation. 3 subjects confirmed, 1 with direct contact with the minor. Full protocol in effect. The biker leading Doyle was visibly shaking. "It was just to scare the girl," he blurted out. "Just to make his family uncomfortable enough to consider moving." That was all Mercer wanted. "Too late," I replied, watching the Suburbans strategically position themselves around my property. "You laid a hand on my daughter." Men in tactical gear stepped out of the vehicles, moving with a coordinated efficiency that only comes from years of specialized training. They wore no agency insignia, but their gear and movements spoke volumes about their backgrounds. "Colonel." The lead operator nodded respectfully as he approached. I recognized Mike Dawson, who had served under my command on 3 deployments. "Safety belt." Doyle was sweating profusely. "Listen, we can explain everything. Mercer paid us $2,000 to run you out of the neighborhood. Said you were causing problems, blocking progress, asking too many questions about finances. We didn't know who you were." Mike raised an eyebrow at me. "Mercer, is that the HOA president you mentioned last month?" I nodded. Apparently, he was outsourcing law enforcement now. Iron Snake had been on the federal radar for months, I said, turning back to Doyle. Task Force 121 had been building a RICO case against his club for intimidation, extortion, and racketeering across 3 counties. It was a happy coincidence that he had arrived at my door. Their eyes widened as understanding dawned. After retiring from the Forest Service, I had not left public service entirely. My security consulting firm had worked closely with the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force, focusing specifically on outlaw motorcycle clubs involved in intimidation and extortion schemes targeting vulnerable communities. I had been feeding information to the task force for months, though I never expected the case to literally land on my doorstep. The roar of more engines announced the arrival of additional unmarked vehicles, blocking both ends of my driveway. More men in tactical gear were deployed efficiently, all former members of my Ranger team who had transitioned to federal service after their service. Doyle knelt. "I swear I don't know who you are, Colonel. No one told us this property belonged to you." The second biker, the one with the tactical awareness, suddenly spoke up. "Sir, I served in the 10th Mountain Division. Not like your outfit, but I respect what your Rangers did for us in Kandahar. I would never have come here if I had known. We were just told it was an easy intimidation job." The youngest biker was openly weeping. "I just got out of prison last month," he pleaded. "Please, sir, I'll tell you everything Mercer did. Names, dates, everything. Don't send me back inside." Out on the street, Mercer's Escalade roared to life. Through my security system app, I saw him preparing to flee the scene. A third tactical vehicle appeared from around the corner, blocking him. 2 officers approached his car, one on each side. "Your boss seems to be trying to leave in a hurry," I remarked, showing Doyle my phone screen with the live security feed, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and betrayal as he realized Mercer was trying to ditch them. "That son of a bitch." He swore. He said it was county authorized. Said he was breaking the rules, and we were just helping enforce local regulations. The irony of that last statement was not lost on anyone present. Mike approached me with a tablet. "Sir, we downloaded the data from their phones. I thought you'd find this interesting." He showed me a text conversation between Mercer and Doyle. Mercer made them scared for their safety, but kept it deniable. Needed the property vacant by the end of the month. "Doyle, what about the kid?" Mercer used her. Parents do anything when their kids are scared. My jaw clenched. Reynolds noticed and put a steady hand on my shoulder. We got him, Jim. This was textbook intimidation and intrigue. In the living room, Doyle was desperate to get a deal. With 10 federal agents and the county sheriff on the scene, the gravity of his situation had sunk in. We'd done this with 3 other families this month. He volunteered without prompting. The Wilsons on Oak Ridge, the elderly couple who wouldn't sell their corner lot, the elderly couple on Pine who were complaining about the asphalt contract, and the Hispanic family on Merck who were questioning the water bill increase. He described a systematic neighborhood cleanup plan targeting specific homeowners who either occupied strategically valuable properties or had challenged Mercer's authority. Mercer had this entire map, Doyle continued, desperately trying to provide valuable information. The properties were marked with different colors based on whether they needed to be persuaded to sell or simply threatened to keep quiet. He called it community optimization. What emerged was astonishing in its corruption. After threatening the families to sell, Mercer's brother's development company, Meridian Properties, bought each property at below market value. Meanwhile, the HOA had issued no-bid contracts to companies that paid a percentage back to Mercer's private consulting firm, Pinarus Solutions. He specifically wanted 5 acres of his land for a new community center project, Doyle explained. It said it would increase everyone's property values by 20%, but his brother's company had actually drawn up plans for luxury condos connected to a golf course next door. My security cameras revealed something else troubling. Mercer had been watching my property for weeks. The system stored footage of his car driving by at regular intervals, occasionally stopping to take pictures of the house and barn. In one particularly disturbing clip, he could be seen directing another man to place something near our mailbox. Reynolds immediately sent deputies to check the area, where they discovered a small tracking device magnetically attached to a mailbox post. This was beyond HOA overreach, Reynolds said, his expression darkening. This was criminal harassment, conspiracy, and possibly attempted real estate fraud. Agent Ramirez nodded in agreement. We would need a search warrant for Mercer's residence, his HOA office, and his brother's development company. Reynolds couldn't hide his satisfaction. I have been trying to nail this corruption for years. No one will talk. Everyone is too scared of what might happen to their property values or of being the next target. 2 days later, more than 200 neighbors gathered in my barn for an emergency town meeting. People who had barely spoken to each other now stood shoulder to shoulder, united in their shock and outrage. I had built the barn to be convertible for community events, something I had dreamed of during deployments, thinking about ways to create the sense of village cohesion I had witnessed in functioning communities overseas. Ironically, it took a threat to make that vision a reality. The Wilsons, an elderly couple who had mysteriously decided to move to Florida the month before, returned for the meeting. Mrs. Wilson, a retired teacher, broke down, explaining how the bikers had intimidated her grandchildren during a visit, making threatening remarks until they felt unsafe in their own home. We lived there for 37 years, Mr. Wilson said, his voice cracking. Raised our children there. But after those men showed up 3 times in 1 week, our grandchildren were too scared to visit. What other choice did we have? Neighbors came forward one by one with similar stories. The Garcia family from Merck Street described receiving daily inspection notices for imaginary violations, culminating in a visit from men advising them that some neighborhoods were more comfortable for certain types of people. Martin Chun, a newly elected board member, admitted that financial documents had been withheld from most boards. Whenever I asked questions, Mercer would say that detailed assessments would only slow down community progress. Now I understood why. Emma surprised me by asking to speak. She had always been quiet in groups, preferring the company of animals and books to large gatherings. Standing before the crowd, my 16-year-old daughter showed more courage than I had seen in some combat veterans. They think they can scare us because we live alone, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. They figured a teenage girl and her father would be easy targets. But what they didn't realize was that when you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us. We're not just property owners, we're neighbors. We're a community, and we're not going to be bullied anymore. The room erupted in applause. I felt a surge of pride as I watched her stand tall, refusing to be defined as a victim. Local news stations arrived as federal agents executed a search warrant, escorting Mercer from his home in handcuffs. His carefully constructed facade crumbled as reporters documented his arrest. The story quickly expanded beyond local news as connections to similar schemes in neighboring counties emerged. After the formal meeting ended, people lingered, swapping contact information and forming impromptu committees. I offered my security expertise to neighbors, showing them simple measures to protect their property. Cameras, motion sensors, proper lighting, things that had become second nature to me but were revelations to many. It's not about creating a fortress, I explained to a group gathered around my security screen. It's about awareness and basic documentation. Most intimidation is based on not having a record of what actually happened. The cyclist's detailed testimony exposed a network that extended beyond Mercer to include 2 county officials who facilitated the scheme by burying complaints and fast-tracking permits for Meridian properties. A forensic audit revealed $645,000 in HOA funds embezzled over 3 years. Money that went to build Mercer's lake house instead of improving our community. When the Garcia family, who had been forced to leave, returned to consider buying back their home, now owned by Mercer's brother, the community spontaneously organized a fundraiser to help with their legal costs. Something powerful had happened. A divided neighborhood found common purpose and justice. "I've lived here 15 years, my neighbor David remarked. And this is the first time I've ever known half these people's names. It's a shame it took something like this to bring us together." I nodded, understanding. Sometimes the strongest relationships are formed in response to a threat. The real test will be what we build now. The state attorney eventually filed 27 criminal charges against Mercer and his associates. The evidence was overwhelming, with financial records, witness testimony, and electronic communications building a watertight case. In the weeks that followed, our community changed. What began as a response to corruption became a blueprint for rebuilding. We drafted a new HOA charter with mandatory financial transparency, term limits, and oversight protections. Quarterly financial reviews became public, with detailed explanations of all expenditures over $1,000. When a reporter asked me if I would consider running for HOA president, I declined. Leadership should rotate among neighbors. No one person should have too much control for too long. Instead, we created a rotating council with representatives from each street, ensuring diverse perspectives would inform decisions. The first order of business was to return improperly collected fines to affected homeowners. What started as a personal confrontation sparked reforms that spread throughout the county. The state legislature launched an investigation into predatory HOA practices, expanding to 3 surrounding counties where similar patterns were emerging. A bill was introduced that would require HOAs to adhere to strict financial transparency guidelines and limit their ability to impose punitive fines without due process. In a twist that still makes me smile, Emma's Chicken Project won first place at the county fair, earning her a $10,000 scholarship. Her detailed documentation of heritage breed characteristics and sustainable farming practices impressed the judges. But it was her piece on community integration of farming projects that really stood out. "Agricultural awareness builds stronger communities," she wrote in her presentation. "When people understand where their food comes from and the work involved in producing it, they develop greater respect for both the land and each other." The chickens Mercer tried to remove have become symbols of resistance. Neighbors who once complained about the occasional squawk now bring their children to learn about egg production and sustainable farming. My property, once targeted for takeover, has turned into a community gathering space. We have monthly cookouts where neighbors who have lived as strangers for years now gather.